Hi, my name is Attorney Walter, if not the third. I'm with Disability Resolution PA. I want to go through this real quick with you because I noticed that in a lot of the chat and the text and the communications between people that there was kind of a disconnect. Some people were like, disabled people are useless bums, they're just taking from the system, yada yada. Some people were obviously defending the disabled, saying like you can't always see the impairments of the person, even though you think you understand what they have. And I wanted to jump in and kind of give a perspective from somebody who works with disabled people, disabled homeless, disabled about to be homeless, disabled people who are lucky enough to have their own home. I wanted to give my perspective on this so that you can understand somebody who's basically been a part of this system for a while now, 8 years under my own law firm and then a bunch of other years under other law firms and other things with the ADA and things like that, working with that. I want you to understand how it works. Disabled people go through an incredibly difficult process to be found disabled. It is not like 3 years ago. It is not like 5 years ago. It is not like 10 years ago. It is not like 15 years ago. It is not like 20 years ago. Yes, you are right. Back in the day, there was a lot of fraud and cheating the system. And the law firms that were involved with that, they got some pretty hard swipes. They really did. The bottom line, well, the classic one that happened actually not too long ago, they got caught doing it not too long ago. And it's one that you see on TV all the time. They were red tagging files. So if medical documentation would come in, they would put a red tag on it, and that red tag means you do not submit it to the administrative law judge. So the SSA came out with the rule that said you have to submit all relevant medical documentation. And what they really meant was you have to submit all medical documentation. I mean, sure, if we're talking about a claim where it's like this person's got back problems and all of a sudden you're talking about some weird, hanging toenail thing that you had clipped at some, medical that wasn't, that might not be relevant. But for the most part, pretty much everything is relevant. First and foremost, I want to go into this. People getting onto Social Security disability benefits now are going through the toughest, most restricted system they have ever gone through before. These Social Security disability judges are more trained, more knowledgeable than they have ever been. There are more rules than there have ever been. I want you to understand that when it comes to the forms, the layouts, the processing, technologically, it is significantly more advanced than it used to be. They are processing so many more claims than they used to. And a lot of that is basically more people are applying, and also the technology was catching up to help them compete against the private organizations that were also processing them. Okay. Let's talk about this. Disabled people. Are most of the new people being found disabled really disabled? Well, there's a standard. We use what's called the 5-step sequential process. I'm going to give you the most baby simple version of that so you understand it, because we need to get through it and get to the next part. 1, you can't be earning too much. 2, your impairment's got to last 12 months or be terminal. 3, you got to meet, equal, or exceed a listing, get an RFC done if not. 4, you can't do your past work. 5, you can't do relevant transferable skilled work or unskilled work at full-time level or realistically just above part-time. Now you know the elements of disability in the most simple way that I can put them. Okay. I need you to understand that the big important one there was the standard element, which is element 3. Element 3 is called the listings element. The listings element has a big list of impairments split up into categories. Musculoskeletal category, respiratory category, mental category. They're split up into categories. There's even one for children. The whole point is that people have to meet, equal, or exceed. They have to be as bad as, worse than, or the equivalency of one of those impairments. Okay? They got to be it, like it, or worse than it. Okay. Now, with that said, they are very, very severe. They are based upon what I like to call pretty much extreme, but they're not extreme. You have trace, mild, moderate, severe, extreme. The one I always classically refer to is, look, if you meet the listing for amputation, right, element 3, you can be found disabled at element 3 and not have to do 4 and 5. For an amputation, all they need are both of your ankles, right, down to your feet, amputated, which to me is extreme, but that's considered severe, or your entire leg and half your hip amputated, which to me, once again, that's a pretty extreme limitation, but for the SSA, that is severe. All right? Trace, mild, moderate, severe, extreme. All right. Then they have special statutes for extreme impairments, which are CALS, compassion allowance listings. All right, let's talk real quick. What does this all come down to? Yes, there are a lot of people on disability benefits currently right now who are going through CDRs, who are getting kicked off of disability benefits because their impairments no longer meet the severity requirements of the modern disability system. Yes, they are held to the new system and not the original system that they were found disabled on. Yes, many people who are not currently undergoing a CDR will be undergoing a CDR because if they can kick off more people off of the system, then they can save more money to pay other people. Yes, there's a lot of new disabled people, and there's a lot of new impairments that medically we've discovered over the past 20 to 30 years, and we've learned more of. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but a lot of these big pharma places are not coming out with cures. They're mostly just coming out with ways to treat them over a long period with very, very large amounts of money required to buy their services, their pills, their therapies, their whatever. Right. So that's how America works. It's not how Israel works, but that's how America works. So what does that mean? It means that although Israel is seeming to come into that light, though, which is problematic and sad, because that is pretty much the front runner when it comes to medical treatment. So what does this all mean? It means that the disability system is going to be a tough one to be in, or a tough one to be a part of going forward. That means that most people who are on disability benefits will experience a CDR, and that CDR standard will continue to climb and rise and rise and rise. Yes, it's true a lot of people back in the day were able to get onto Social Security disability benefits for mental impairments. Your classics are anxiety, 12.06 depression, 12.04. Yes, they did. But are many of those individuals currently going through CDRs, the 8-step sequential process? Not 5, but 8? Yes. Are quite a handful of them getting kicked off of the system? Yes. So right up front, you need to understand that if you're angry and mad and pissed off that you see all of these fakers out there, they're not fakers. For the most part, they're good, honest American people who are found disabled. And that system is changing, and it's going to be hard for them to keep their benefits. And if their impairments are severe enough, they will keep their benefits. I know a lot of people who have said to me, oh, I got my benefits, I didn't have to do nothing. I didn't have to do anything. And then I see them out there, kicking a soccer ball around, and they got a knee problem, playing basketball, and they've got a back problem. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, 2 years later, I'll totally forget about them. I'll get a call from them. You don't remember me, but I met you one time over on this street by the homeless shelter. And, I got, I went through a CDR. You know what a CDR? Yeah, I know what a CDR. And they kicked me off, and they removed my benefits. I need you guys to understand the program is shifting and shaping immensely. So if you're one of those sitting back going, we're throwing all this money into this system, and all these people are getting this money, and they shouldn't be getting this money. If there were mistakes, if there was fraud, the Social Security Administration is getting better at fixing it at a very, very fast pace. This isn't like in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s where there was a little bit of movement here and a little magic here. We're not talking about Han Solo slightly drifting the Millennium Falcon a little bit and going, what'd you think? That's not what's happening. A lot of things are changing, and they're changing, in my opinion, in a great way, because a lot of the people that need to go on the program aren't able to go into the program because of a lot of things. A, there's too many people applying, many of which don't even meet the basic minimum requirements. And I want to go through that real quick. A lot of people applying are like, hey, I'm going to apply because, you know what? I've had this issue for a while. Maybe I could work, maybe I couldn't. Let's see what happens. The problem inherent with that is that it's taking up a lot of adjudicatory time with the DDS reps and also the SSA ALJs, the AAJs, and then we go to the district circuit and Supreme Court levels for Social Security disability benefits. So we got a problem there where a lot of people are applying this shouldn't be applying. And the other issue is that the system, albeit, is supposed to be able to, figure out who's disabled and who's not. But the reality is that there is no perfect system here, right? There's no, you reach this age, therefore you get this. Like retirement. Retirement's easy. It's bullet points, we get it. You don't really need attorneys for retirement because you know exactly what you're getting. But disability benefits, you don't really know what you're getting, right? Because, one judge could approve it. They like a particular impairment. It's moderate to severe. Maybe it's severe. They give them the benefit of the doubt. Right? Versus retirement, de facto numbers, you either reach it or you don't. So what we've got here is an impossible to be perfect system. Couldn't be perfect. It's imperfect. It will always be imperfect. There is no way to make this perfect. And I want to explain to you why that is. So when somebody is disabled, they could have one impairment. Now, one impairment we can pin down. We can say, well, this one impairment medically, it meets this test requirement. It looks like we've got those numbers from that test, and therefore it meets our schedule. It meets our little graph, and we feel good about ourselves, and life is great. Gold stars to everybody. It's a win-win-win-win-win, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. But most of these claimants don't fall into the one impairment scenario. Most of these claimants fall into the multi-impairment scenario. Well, okay, to name a classic phrase I always use, what are your top 5 most severe impairments? What are your top 5 most severe impairments? I always ask claimants this, and it always amazes me how they'll get to the hearing, right? They'll be with another attorney, then they switch to me right before the hearing. We'll get to the hearing, and they won't have any friggin' clue what is their next impairment. Well, I've got this problem. Okay, cool. What other impairments? And they sit there for 5 minutes trying to figure out what impairments they have, and then they sit there for 10 minutes trying to figure out which is the most severe. You would think after applying for years this would be like on the top of their head, but it's not. And that's because it's an imperfect system. So let's take that original idea. We've got one impairment, right? One impairment, we can figure this out, no problem. Show me the graphs, right? We're going to go through our statutes. We're going to find our little table. We're going to make the medical stuff match up with that little table. Life is good. Everybody gets a gold star. Now we have multiple impairments. Well, wait a minute. Now our perfect little system of medical diagnostic information is not able to pinpoint exactly when severe occurs. Because now we might have a bunch of moderate impairments that cause severe functional limitation in a vocational environment. That's a way of saying they can't work because they got a bunch of impairments that cause interlocking problems that are actually severe. Now we've got a problem, right? So we might have, this problem, and now they can't walk, right? So at first we had a hip issue, we felt good about it. Then we have a blood issue, and now all of a sudden you have the hip issue and the blood issue, and now they're much worse. They're far, far worse off. This is the imperfect problem. This is the weird gridlocky situation that we can't really get around easily, because the moment you start involving 2 or more impairments and essentially how it limits a person's ability to work, because that's what it comes down to. Like if they don't meet, equal, or exceed one of those listings, we then look at, can they do work? Then what that means is that basically there can be no perfect system. There can be no perfect system. We have to involve medical experts, vocational experts, medical consultants, adjudicators. You got to have all these different things because it's not a simple, straightforward bullet point system. All right. Now you get why this is not easily applicable across the spectrum. Now, I gave you stupid simple, categories and examples there. Now I'd like you to consider we have somebody with some sort of white matter issue on the brain, that which we do not have enough medical research into, and now a judge is sitting there with that, the resulting anxiety, depression, and learning impairments, and basically a spinal issue as well, with connective tissue and neurological issues down to the hands, limiting dexterity when it comes to both general grabbing of items and fingering, fine manipulative fingering, like typing on a keyboard. All of a sudden you can see it starts to get complex. And what we look to then is, all right, how limited is this person with working? You might look at somebody and not see a single Band-Aid. You might look at somebody and not see a single bandage, ambulatory device, if you don't know what that is, walker, cane, crutch, whatever, one of the ambulatory walking device. You might see somebody without some sort of obvious showing, right? So we look at the wrestling arena and we see a wrestler in there with the bandage around their arm, and the other wrestler goes, well, I'm going to beat that guy up there. But see, that's the problem. Disability is not that simple. That's a show. They put that bandage on that wrestler with purpose. It's to get you to accept the fact that your hero is limited in their abilities, that they are not unrestricted in their strength like they normally are. And then we think how dirty that other person is to attack our wrestler with the bandage on the arm and specifically take advantage of a wounded person. So, whatever, after our heart. I get that. I get what you know, it's an emotional game. But disability benefits in that regard is not so obvious. So the problem then becomes, all right, if disabilities are not always hugely and directly and simply obvious, right? If we can't always just see them and say, well, that person obviously has a blood disorder. Well, that person obviously has a thyroid disorder. You know, and you're like, well, that person obviously has a back disorder. There's, the problem we get into is people look at the person with anxiety, and the person with anxiety is laughing, interacting with the group, they're getting along. That's the first time they may have done that in a year. And then all of a sudden they go back to their room and the demons in their head start to come out, and all of a sudden they're hyper anxious all the time. They're having panic attacks that last 30 or more minutes. They're screaming and getting, essentially hyper aggressive, or perhaps they just have to close themselves off in the all of a sudden this person that seems normal at first is now having not so normal behavior. Normal is a sliding scale. What we see, what we perceive, is not always what it actually is. There are people with cancer, they look okay, they're dead the next day. So for a lot of you guys out there that are sitting back going, well, that person, you don't look disabled. Where'd you get your medical degree? And then you go, what kind of medical degree is it? And I want to point out, when people say that, in my head, and I'm not trying to be mean, in my head, that's the blind looking at the blind person, right? That's the, somebody is, and I say that because when you look at a blind person, you obviously know that they're blind because, they've got darkened glasses on, they might have assistive devices with them, they might have a beautiful animal that's been trained to help them in their activities, it's obvious. But not all impairments are like that. Which is why I like to think of it as when people say that, they're blind in themselves because they don't consider the other things that are out there. All right. So, perspective. It is important to remember that a lot of people who are on disability benefits are basically impaired at a severe level in some way where they can't work. And for that reason, the system now increased how often they have continuing disability reviews. And it's darn hard to get onto the program. And it's darn hard to stay on the program now. So I'd ask you, what I'd like you to look at with this particular situation is this. Your first viewing of an individual that is disabled may not be the whole story. The cover on that book, and you all know the phrase, and I understand that, is not always going to be what the book is about. And we both know the best books have the crappiest covers. Crappy lettering, it's like 2 words and it's falling apart, there it is. And then the books that are the worst have like 3D print and it's holographic and wow, and then you open it up and the glasses fall out to have 3D. We all know that. The bottom line with this video is I'm trying to have you understand that with disabled people, your perspective may not be inherently correct up front as to who that person is. And trust me, everybody likes to people watch. Everybody likes to judge people. We like to imagine who that person is, But the reality is, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. You can judge people left and right, go for it. But just give a little buffer space. For me, for you, for anybody, give a little buffer space. You may not know inherently who that person is. And then going to basically go for the jugular in communications with them right off the bat, give them a little buffer space. And that's not for you to be able to receive them validating your opinion, for them to prove that they're not disabled to you. That's for them to have a little space to feel comfortable with you. Because you might actually miss out on some really good information from a person who is disabled, who feels more comfortable around you, who's more willing to open up to you. So if you're one of those people that's like, well, I don't think this person is disabled, I get it. You don't know what the standards and definitions of disability are. The SSA standard and definition of disability is, in my opinion, much more difficult than the severity requirements for the VA. Nobody will question that it's more difficult than the disability requirements for short-term disability, long-term disability, private disability benefits. Nobody would question that. So my point to you in this situation is that if you could do me a favor and perhaps not judge people right up front as a useless human being, but rather as somebody who has true impairments, give them a little buffer space, because you might learn something from them that actually helps you. Because if you're watching this channel, you might be trying to get disability benefits, and some of the people watching this channel might already have disability benefits, and you might learn something from them. So for a lot of the people out there commenting on here, hey, you're a terrible person because you're not, you're obviously not disabled and cha-cha-cha, yada yada, I beg of you, just a little buffer space could go a long way. My name is Attorney Walter, if not the third. Have an absolutely wonderful day. I'll catch you a little bit later. And if you have any questions, if it's about obtaining disability benefits, reach out to the firm. If it's other questions, then basically catch up with me on the live session, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, live on YouTube. Remember, Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Central, Mountain, Pacific, Alaska, Hawaii. You just go back an hour. So 8 to 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 to 3. All right. Have an absolutely wonderful day, and we'll catch up later. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.